Hello, I'm David. I'm a pastor of a church down here in Ada, Oklahoma, and I want to talk about revivalism in particular. Revival is you can kind of defined as a wave of religious feeling that sweeps across a society, a culture, whatever it is. We know about as Christians. We know all about the Great Awakening. We know about different events like that in history. And as pastors, as preachers, as guys going to school to become better in the ministry, as I assume is what most of our my fellow classmates, our demographic is people who want to be preachers or better preachers or what have you. I think that the topic of revival is very important. If you know anything about the condition of the American church, you know this is true. I've been preaching for 10 years, and I've been a pastor for several years now, and I know from several hard years of ministry how difficult and how serious and how intense this subject is, because the fact is that the church in America is in a very dying state. It's a very delicate state. It's a very decaying state, if you will. I read a book recently by a guy named Miller called Letters to a Young Pastor. And in that first chapter of his book, he gives some statistics about the condition of the American church at the time that he wrote the book. And in his little summary there of the American church, what you see is that America is actually ranked third behind China and India in the number of non-professing Christians, which means that America now is very much an unreached group of people. We're the type of people that need missionaries sent to us. And you look at just the fallout rate of pastors, you know that over a 20-year period, 80% of preachers will quit the ministry. And what does that have to do with? Well, that has to do with mean, hateful, really, I want to say degenerate, reprobate church members who make life so difficult for preachers that they don't want to be preachers anymore. And that can be fixed through revival. Churches are falling apart. If you're part of the 20% that remains in the pastorate, statistically, you're probably going to pastor a church of 100 members or less, because that's all that's left of American churches. And so I think more than ever, you look at the condition of our nation, you look at the moral decay in our nation, you look at the violence on TV, and you look at the decay of the church. All these things are connected. And I say it once again, what we need is revival. Morris wrote a book called Renewed by the Word. And it's really just, if I could retitle that book, I'd retitle it Church History, the Short Version. And he really just looks at a study of church history, and in America and in Britain specifically since the Reformation. And he studies these revivals, these waves that hit countrysides and hit cultures and reform nations and define people and define church groups. And he starts talking about, of course, the Reformation. And I'm sure of my audience, you know all about the Reformation, so I'm not going to go into all of that. But there was after the split, if you want to call it that, from the Catholic Church with Martin Luther and all that, a particular person named Spener. He lived from 1635 to 1705. And he noticed and was really upset because he saw that the church had changed on the outside, but it hadn't changed on the inside. The church was still very much Catholic, and it was, according to him, in a deplorable state. It needed to be remade. And so he developed something that came to be called pietism. And pietism, essentially, was meeting in small groups and having just a personal devotion, a personal dedication to the Word of God and your personal relationship with the Lord. And this touched just about anybody you can think of, even guys like Jonathan Edwards, John Wesley, and it set the stage for all of the big revivals that you hear about, that he was able to teach people to have a personal passion and to be personally responsible for their relationship with the Lord. It wasn't about the ritual of church. It wasn't about the ritual of this is when we stand, this is when we sit down, this is when we tithe, and these are the songs that we sing. It was about personal devotion. And in a time where the American church is falling apart, I think it'd be wise to look back at these, may I call them the fathers of Christianity in a way, or maybe the fathers of revivalism, the John Wesleys, the Jonathan Edwards, and the Spiners, or Spiners, however you want to pronounce his name, that developed these systems. It has worked in the past. That this is not the first time that the church has been falling apart. This is not the first time. This is not a new development in America. This is not the first time that the church needed to be renewed. And how does that renewal come? How do you be renewed? As the title of the book goes, you're renewed by the Word. I think as preachers, as teachers of preachers, for my professor, if we can instill this in people, if we can teach people to teach people how to have a personal relationship with the Lord, how to be devoted, how to be devout, how to study their Bible as seriously as their pastor does, how to be absolutely dedicated. It creates, and has created in the past at least, a wave of religious feeling. It has created revival. I think that's how we get the hand of God to move in our country. I think that's how we see our churches blessed once again. Thank you.